You're listening to the Roundup Podcast, a podcast on reaching the college campus, developing leaders, and sending out kingdom multipliers. This podcast is created by the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention and provided through cooperative program giving.
Well, howdy, friends, and welcome to the Roundup Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Tidwell, and I have my co-host with me, Chase Abner. Chase, what's happening, my man?
Not much, Mitch, but I must ask you a question.
Oh, yes, you should. You should.
Something's different about you.
Yeah, something is different. So we're probably at this point in time, it's October, 27th. We have a baby. Our second child comes next week. I'm taking some extended time off, like to the end of the year with holidays. And so basically, I won't have to be seen for the next 2 months. So I've never really grown out a mustache, so I'm starting that attempt to grow it out. And I guess now that we're talking about it, I'm keeping myself accountable to probably keeping it at least for the next few months. So yeah, if you can't tell, it's coming in slightly. Just looks like a dirty upper lip. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to it, that probably sounds really weird. but we're working on it. Yeah,
it's
man,
different than your normal dirty upper lip, I guess.
It is, man. It is. It's a lot different. So, anyways, that's what's new in my world. Besides, I'm trying to, as my wife is preparing for our child, I am preparing for this mustache over the holiday season. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And hey, I saw that you guys were carving pumpkins as a family. Was that from the Abner Garden?
The Abner Garden. Yeah, actually 2 of them were from my garden.
Nice.
I only produced 3, but one of them rotted in the patch before I picked it. But yeah, man, we're getting ready for Halloween.
Awesome.
Costumes finished up and carving the pumpkins.
I know that's a big deal to the Abner family. The Tidwell family just thinks that's the weirdest holiday in the world, and we don't even touch it. But you guys seem to really love the Halloween season.
Yeah. We dabble in the occult.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. Oh, man. Well, hey, friends, I appreciate y'all joining us today. We got Justin Smith on, who is, you probably remember Justin Smith from last year. We had him on in October talking about the road to planting. He was at Columbus Avenue Baptist Church in Waco. He was a college pastor, felt a burden to plant, and so had then agreed that he would go to Redeemer Church in Lubbock to start a residency to then plant a church. But he didn't know how, he didn't know where. It was simply him and Rebecca, his wife, taking a step of faith to say, hey, we want to plant, and this is like our first step. So we're like a year in now. And so, hey, Justin, it's been a year. How's it going, man? How are you guys doing?
Man, it's going really well. It has been a crazy year. A lot has changed since we talked. I mean, I'm currently in Lubbock, not in Waco anymore, obviously, like you said. But yeah, it's just been a really good season of learning, of resting, reflecting, and just been really good for my family, really good for me. So yeah, we're just really grateful. This has been a great year.
So Lubbock, excuse me, I feel like Lubbock gets a bad rap basically everywhere, not just in Texas, but outside of Texas. Totally. And I know it's not, Waco is, what used to be the weirdest place in Texas is now like a destination. So tell us, I mean, what's your quick take on Waco? Or not Waco, Lubbock, I'm sorry.
Lubbock, yeah. Man, more restaurants than you could ever want. That's a bonus. It's a cool town. Driving into it, you're like, where the heck? Like when we moved there, we were like, where did we just move to? Yeah. Like I'm from Arkansas with mountains and trees and lakes, and I'm in the literal opposite right now.
Yeah, you are. It's just brown.
It is. Yeah, it's brown. We had a dust storm yesterday. So like I was driving down the street and the sky is red and everything is covered in dust. Everything is just perpetually dirty. Man, we like it. We like it a lot. We got good people here. We've got family here, not literal family, but we've got people who have become our family. So we love Lubbock. It's going to be hard to leave. It'll be as hard to leave Lubbock as it was to leave Waco. And we were in Waco for 7 years. What we won't miss is being 5 hours away from anything else. Driving anywhere from Lubbock. I mean, you guys have come to Lubbock. It is just the worst ever. So I'm excited I'm excited to be back in Central Texas, where I'm close to everything else.
Yeah,
man, you're right. Lubbock is pretty dirty. It's so dirty, even your pastor is dusty.
Oh no, man!
We have two guys. We have two guys on staff named Dusty. And I think it's just I think it's just a normal thing. Babies are born here in Lubbock, and they look outside and say, "What do you think about Dusty?" All right, let's name him Dusty.
The Abner humor, man, for the dub, man. That is good. I love it.
That's 2 puns. We're like 5 minutes in. That's 2 puns that he's given so far.
That's incredible. Man. I just, Chase's humor to me just keeps getting better and better. I love it. It's great, man. Awesome. Well, hey, Justin, so it's been a year. You've been in Lubbock at the residency. So really, you've talked a little bit about what has happened, but when did you jump into the residency there at Redeemer, and how's that gone? What have you guys talked about? What have you learned? What decisions have you made? All those kind of things.
Yeah. So we kind of started this process somewhere around March of last year, March of 2019, like a week before or March of 2020, sorry, a week before the pandemic hit, like the week before the country shut down. We had our first talk with Redeemer here in Lubbock, and the process really kind of started then. We didn't end up moving out to Lubbock until December of that year. And so we had a kind of a long process of casting vision, raising support, kind of doing some things in preparation while we were in Waco. But then once we moved to Lubbock, things kind of sped up just a little bit as far as the process that I'm in. I got to start the residency, doing stuff here at the church, going through a cohort with other church planters, learning, meeting with people, and then doing, just regular ministry stuff, like we all do in our churches or in our ministries, here at Redeemer. And so it's been a really, really, really cool thing. A lot has changed. Last time we were on this podcast, I had 1 child. Now I have 2 children.
That's right.
And he was born in Lubbock. The second one, one of the guys who works with me here looks at the staff picture that I've got on the Redeemer website and says, I look a lot younger in that staff picture. And that picture was taken about a week or so before Jude was born. So I think the difference is 1 kid and 2 kids. But we've come up with a location. Well, you mentioned how we didn't really know anything coming in. Now we know a whole lot more. We've got people involved. We've got a location. We have got at least the beginnings of a vision for the future. We can kind of see it, and so it's been really exciting.
Justin, tell us about. Well, first, let us know where you're going to be planting, and then fill us in on the process of how you narrowed that down. Yeah,
so we, in Waco, we put a big old map of the United States in my office and started putting pins in just a bunch of college towns. We knew we wanted to plant in a college town, but that's about all we knew. And we started putting some pins in different places and writing notes, about these cities, things that I knew or things that we had heard, and just kind of started praying, looking at the map every day and just praying. We actually basically scratched off Austin at the beginning. We just know a lot of people who are doing great ministry down there, and we knew that it was a fast-growing city. We knew that there was that kind of post-Christian culture that exists there uniquely, at least in Texas. But we just knew too many people down there who were doing stuff that we really liked, and so we kind of scratched it off. But as we started talking to folks in Austin, pastors, people who are a part of these churches that we really respect and have learned from, work with, more and more of them started telling us like, no, actually, we would vote for you to come to Austin. And we actually haven't gotten one pastor that we've talked to there who has been kind of in opposition to this. All of them have said, oh yeah, we want more and more people to come. And so that kind of got our attention, and we started looking at Austin again. And my wife and I, as we prayed about this, it kind of came down to 3 cities, and all of them very unique, different from one another, all had specific reasons for why we were looking at them. But eventually the conversation started to be like, well, if we end up going to Austin, then it'll be like this. Or if we end up going to Austin, well, if it's Austin, and eventually like all of us, me, my wife, folks here at Redeemer, everyone involved is like, so it's Austin, right? Like all we're talking about is Austin. And so it wasn't like this kind of, moment where I'm out in the wilderness praying and God puts a giant billboard of like a skyline of Austin or something, and I just know that that's it. It was just a really a year-long process of praying, having conversations with people, doing a ton of research, and yeah, just having a whole lot of people speak into that. I mean, a ton of people got a say in that decision, and yeah, it's just kind of a team effort to eventually say, you know what, we think God is calling us to Austin. There are enough pushes and tugs toward Austin where we think that's the place where God wants us to go.
So besides it, being home to a major university, and besides the fact that multiple pastors were very welcoming and excited about the thought of another ministry or church launching there, what were some other things that made it arise to that top 3?
Yeah, so we had a couple of things that we were looking for in particular, besides the fact that it was a college town. We wanted a place that was more post-Christian in nature, and we were really kind of using Barna's statistics and looking at cities there. Austin's the most post-Christian city in Texas, and it's in the top 25 in the U.S. And then we wanted a campus and a city that had a decent amount of influence for at least the area around it. And Austin in particular is a very transient city. So people will move to Austin, not just college students. All of us college ministers are used to somebody coming in and then 4 years leaving. That's why we love college ministry, because it basically sends people for us. But Austin is like that as a city, that people will move in, work for these big tech companies or whatever the case may be that draws them to Austin. And then they'll end up going to a bunch of different places around the country. And so, I mean, it's kind of like Tim Keller's, the city is the place where culture kind of trickles down like a river off of a mountain or whatever to the rest of the country. Austin is one of those places. And so, and then in just a place where honestly we felt like we would be at home, a place where we felt like we could thrive as a family, and as ministry leader and stuff. So that took a lot longer to feel out and figure out. But eventually we were like, you know what, we could see ourselves living in Austin 10 years from now, whatever Austin's going to look like in 10 years. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense, that kind of process, those questions.
That's good. There's a lot of church planters who, they feel a call to a type of place, but I think what you're sharing, it just helps provide them with a script of how should they narrow down their search beyond it's a college town and there's a need there, how else should they think about a place that would fit their family? That's good. Thank you.
We got really good advice from a guy in Austin, and he wasn't necessarily trying to convince us to come, but he said, like, man, listen, you are picking the place where you're hopefully going to be living for the rest of your life. Like, that needs to be a thing. You don't need to go to some place where you're not going to thrive and your family's not going to thrive. And it doesn't mean we don't sacrifice for mission. We for sure sacrifice for mission. But is this a city that I'm going to be still in love with, 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road? That was a real question, and something that I had never thought of. It was very helpful to us in this process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always said I hope that I die in Fort Worth, but if there's anywhere else I'd rather live, it would be Austin, man. I love that place. So I'll come visit you guys for sure.
Well, my secret evil plan is to steal you away from the SBTC, and
Well, hey,
you can work with me, right?
Here's the deal. I'm gonna work out where I can just work remotely and be stationed there, and we'll just the best of both worlds, man. We'll make it happen.
The people want it, Mitch. The people
That's
want
right.
it.
That's right, man. Well, hey, Justin, in part one, you shared a really strong vision about reaching and developing sending college students, and there's a number of ways that really you can do that. You can, whether that be a college pastor, whether that be a campus ministry, whether that be going to do an established church and pastoring a church that already exists. But like, why did you choose to plant a church? Why was that route what you guys decided to do? How did you know you were supposed to plant? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. It's a hard thing for me when I got into college ministry, like my first year as a full-time, even at that point, actually interim college pastor. I just had a friend who invited me up to this conference, and just for me to learn. He's like, "Hey, you're new, you're green on college ministry, that kind of a thing. Like, just come and learn from some of my friends." And the world that I was kind of brought into was less college ministry and more collegiate church planting. And that really shaped the way I even did college ministry. Like in my established local church in Waco, we kind of operated like a church plant. And so we kind of caught the bug naturally. Mm-hmm. We just been around it, and we saw the value of it. And you match that with kind of just my personality, my aptitudes, what I think I'm good at, and what I really enjoy. I like to start things, and I like to mobilize people. I like to send people, and like, kind of creating new things. That's a thing that is true of me. Yeah. And then you add on my wife, who has tremendous faith. Rebecca has tremendous faith, but she's the calculated one in the relationship. I'm the like, yeah, sure, let's go do it. And she's like, let's think about it. Let's make a wise decision. Mm-hmm. And in the face of like, at least perceived financial insecurity, or all the unknowns of church planting, all of these things, in the face of all that, she just turned to me and was like, we could do that. And that's like, when she does something like that, it's like, okay, God, you're probably speaking to us. And so we kind of had church planting in the back of our mind for a long time. And even our conversations with our church in Waco, we wanted to be a church planting church eventually. We wanted to get to a place where we could plant churches. And in that scenario, I saw myself as the sender. We even started an internship program that we were hoping to turn into a residency one day and send out church planting teams. But then, we always had this idea of someday we're going to plant a church. Rebecca and I did, and then Redeemer called and kind of gave us this opportunity. And but like, so that's for us. That's kind of how this came about. But the reason why I think planting a church over like being a college minister in an established church, I was that, and I'm all for that. I think that's a really good thing to be a college pastor in an established church. But church plants have this kind of new energy about them, this kind of new potential that exists within them, that is not only just like kind of attractive to folks who are unchurched or maybe have church hurt in their past, something like that, but it also kind of benefits a community around that church plant. Keller talks about this as well. Like a new church in a city will hopefully, if everything's done right, will kind of invigorate a new vision, a new sense of calling, a new energy in the churches that exist around it in a city. And I think that's only amplified with churches around a college campus. So if you take, like, for us, UT, we've got lots of good churches who are reaching University of Texas, but to bring a new one in I think will at least has the potential, if we do things right, has the potential to shake things up, to reinvigorate a new sense of mission for not just our church, but the church in general in Austin. And so yeah, I'm just a huge big fan of church planting. I think it's one of the greatest needs our world has.
Yeah, that's good. Justin, you mentioned part of recognizing your calling was just awareness of your own aptitude. So things that you're obviously already very good at. And it reminded me of the concept from Martin Broadwell, which is somewhat new to me. I'm sure our audience is pretty familiar with this, but I'll share a little bit about it in case they're not. But he talks about the levels of just competence that exists for people. And the first being you're unconsciously incompetent. And that's almost like saying you don't know what you don't know. Yep. And then the next step, you become consciously competent, and you're consciously incompetent. So you know what it is you need to learn. Then it moves up to you're consciously competent, so you know what you know your skills, but then you almost forget and become too acclimated to your skill set or your aptitudes, and you become unconsciously competent. So obviously you're bringing a lot of gifts into the residency with Redeemer, but I'm just curious, like, where have you felt yourself going from unconsciously incompetent, from not knowing what you don't know, or not knowing what you aren't good at, to being consciously incompetent? So help me know, like, some of those moments for you where you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm doing this residency because I'm learning how to do X, or I'm realizing my need for X. Like, fill us in, like, help us get a peek into that for you.
That's a great question.
Yeah, man. And that was kind of the thing, Dusty, the lead pastor here at Redeemer, asked me before we moved to Lubbock, like, hey, what do I hope to get out of this residency? What do I hope to learn? And I couldn't answer the question. And I was like, there are probably 1,000 things that I don't know that I need to learn. And that's what I want to learn. And he was like, we could do that. And so it's been kind of that way from the beginning, since we moved here to Lubbock, and even before we moved to Lubbock, learning the things that I don't know, have been, I mean, that's just incredible. It sucks. I mean, like, you come in thinking you're this incredibly competent guy, and then you realize that, oh no, you're not super competent at all. And so one of the big things for me was learning how to shepherd and lead particularly a staff team, but maybe like a more core leadership team over the long haul. I'm still learning this, and I haven't gotten to try this out, so we'll see how much I'm actually learning. But that was one of the things that I learned as soon as I came in here. I'm not really sure that I know how to do that. I could tell you that, it's really important to, like, try to invest in your staff and to coach people and to train them up, that they're not just cogs in the machine, and people are not, like pawns to be used in your dreams for mission or something like that. But as far as, like, how to actually take care of people, I didn't know. I knew how to mobilize people, and I knew that I knew how to mobilize people. I didn't know how to take care of them and shepherd them well. Still learning that. I think one of the other things that I came in not knowing that I didn't know how to do this was kind of this sense of creating a culture of international sending. That I knew was a thing, obviously, and we that's the reason why I'm attracted to college ministry. It's why everyone listening to this podcast probably loves college ministry, because it gives us an opportunity to reach a generation that will be sent out to the ends of the earth. But what Redeemer's, this is their thing, is they take people in Lubbock and they equip them and they send them around the world. And learning how to actually do that. I grew up in traditional Baptist life. I'm all for the things I'm about to say, but what I knew about, like, international mission was, like, the Lottie Moon offering the posters of missionaries or something like that would be put in the church foyer. But Redeemer has taught me that like a local church, no matter where it is, a local church can be like a hub for impacting the whole world, and not just the concept of that, but like how to actually do that. And it's been a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great how you're, when you're thinking about the possibility of church planting, you recognize there were some aptitudes that you had that would apply to it. But there was just such a draw there that even the things you knew you didn't know didn't keep you from taking that step of faith. And I think a lot of people maybe don't allow themselves to dream or consider church planting or collegiate church planting specifically because they've never done it before and they don't currently know how they'll do every piece of it. And so I think what you're demonstrating is like, if there's a strong desire to do it and there's a matchup of some of the skill set needed, there's ways to finish that, the last 20%, to get you to that point. And so, I think, things like the Redeemer residency are a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I highly recommend doing that kind of a thing. I mean, being a learner, no one's planting a church. No one has ever planted a church who was an expert at planting a church. But like no one's like, so that's even after you've planted, but like no one goes into this process, at least not healthily, and hasn't spent some time doing some real learning. And so I think, you kind of put this guy up here who's like, church planting would be not a thing for me because I don't know everything about it. Like I don't quite feel fully equipped for that. I think that's part of the process that there may be some people who are ready to plant a church right now, but I think for me, my experience was I wanted to plant a church. I felt like God was calling me to plant a church, and I had received affirmation from other people who had said, "This is something that you could do." But the confidence to do that came from or is coming from, I should say, from knowing not that I am ready to do it, but knowing that I've got people around me who can teach me the things that I don't know. And that's not even like during the residency, like 4 years down the road from now when we've planted and stuff like that, like I know that whatever problem I'm going to run into, I know someone who has also run into that problem. And so I don't need to be an expert on all the things. I want to learn as much as I can before we go. But having that community, having that network of people, being a lifelong learner will kind of take care of, at least I'm counting on it taking care of me,
Yeah. Hey, Justin, let's dig into the residency a little bit more. What does like your weeks looks like? Like help, and I know every residency is going to be different in different churches, but like paint us a picture, kind of get us into your shoes in a week. Like what does each week look like for you in that Redeemer residency?
Yeah, so it's it varies a little bit. There's people ask me all the time here at Redeemer, like, what exactly do I do here? And it's a hard question to answer. They see me teach in certain venues, and that's about the only thing they ever see me at. And so, but there's a few constants, and I think probably this is probably general for most residencies too. But I'm in a part of a cohort of other people who are in some sort of similar stage that I am in the process of planting a church. Not all of them are lead planters, but they're kind of generally all in the same process as I am. In my case, around the Redeemer network. So Redeemer has planted several other churches that are also planting churches. And so I'm a resident here in Lubbock, but there are 7 to 10 other residents right now in the Redeemer network around Texas and a few other states. And so I meet with them weekly, and we all get on a Zoom call together and we do some reading together. It's almost kind of like school. We do some reading together and we talk about it. And and we kind of help sharpen each other, mostly like intellectually, and how we're thinking about this. It's very much like a grad school or seminary type thing. And then the other constant, other than regular church staff type things, the other constant specific to residency would be my meetings with basically the elders here at Redeemer, especially the ones who are on staff. So Dusty, the lead pastor, Ben, the executive pastor, and then Brandon, he's an elder and he's also the residency director. He's my boss, and the college director. And so I meet with them each bi-weekly, and I just get to ask questions. And that's literally the agenda. Is I bring the agenda. I bring the questions, and those two things are about the only constants that happen every week. The rest of it is in some ways built by me. And it's not that I had to come in January and say, okay, these are all the things that I want to do with my week and stuff. Let me build out this residency curriculum for myself. But Redeemer has kind of learned that there is no like cookie cutter plug and play curriculum that you could do for every church planner that's going to be the best thing for every single individual that comes through a church planning residency. And so they have done a really good job of, with me, kind of forming a program. Even program may be the wrong word, but a process for the 2 years that I'm here, where I get to learn the things that I don't know, and then once I know that I don't know them, really spend some time trying to learn them. And so for me, like I get to teach a lot here at Redeemer. I get to teach on Sundays, I get to teach at their college gathering. I teach classes, that kind of a thing. I love to do that. And I get lots of time to do like calls, like to Zoom people around the country and ask them questions about church planting. Travel a lot. Like when we didn't know where we were going, I was out of town all the time, going to different cities, trying to figure that kind of thing out. And then a lot of just downtime to pray and to reflect and to read and to really work on myself and my family. And so it may sound pretty simple and boring to someone, especially who like really needs a lot to do. It comes like I'm not, just sitting around doing nothing all day. But you for this residency, you really do need to be a self-starter. You need to be a self-learner. But it is super helpful to me that there is not a ton of structure. That I'm not wasting time doing something that I don't need to do. I'm doing all the things that I really need to do, if that makes sense. It's very customized to me, which I'm just super grateful for. It's really cool. Yeah.
That's good, man.
I don't know. Basically, I didn't answer your question, but
No. That was great.
Yeah, you it's a lot of people who are in the audience and who I would say are potential collegiate church planters. They're often sitting in a role like you were back in Waco, where they are leading a college ministry in a church. Heck, maybe some of them are campus-based ministers or whatever. But the thing about your residency, I think that's helpful in residencies in general. Yes, you're getting some reps in college ministry while you're doing your residency.
Yeah.
You're preaching and teaching to young adults. You're doing some specific studies on how to plant a church, the more missiological side. But you're also getting time with those who lead non-students as well, and believing, that you're called to reach, UT Austin, but also non-student population in Austin. I can imagine it's been really helpful for you to learn a little bit more about leading beyond just the niche, if you will, of college ministry. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, man, that's been one of the things. I mean, I was consciously incompetent on that one. I knew that was something that I really wanted to learn. And one of the benefits of this residency is I've gotten to take all the directors of the different ministries at Redeemer to coffee, and I get to ask them what they do, learn about like our kids ministry, our family ministry here, Like I get to, I mean, I serve in the family ministry every Sunday. And so it's like it's a learning experience for me where, I was aware of what our kids ministry did in Waco, and was teammate alongside the kids ministry folks, but wasn't doing it. And so now here I get to actually take time and like learn from experience on how to minister to families, how to, what does it look like? Like for us, here's the deal. College ministry is super easy. It's everything happens a lot faster. And they're all right where you think they are, like you don't have to go find people. They're like literally like 50,000 people within like 1,000 acres or something like that. Like it is, there are some things that are kind of done for you in college ministry. Where with adults, it's just that's not the way it works. With a college student, I could say, hey, I want to meet for like a discipleship group. Send me your class schedule and your work schedule, and I'll find a time for you, and kind of a thing. And it was pretty easy. I mean, we've all got college students like, I'm super busy, and you're like, you have no idea. You are not busy. The adults are busy. The adults really are actually busy. And if it's not like scheduled things, like they don't have, chapter meetings or basketball games or something like that, they've got kids. They've got families that they need to take care of and stuff. And so there's just a lot of really practical things about, that for whatever reason I didn't learn by being an adult, but by ministering to adults, like if you want to gather a group of men, 6 a.m. is a great time to gather a group of men. To gather a group of young moms, that's a terrible time. And I would never have known that. So there's lots of small things like that. But then also kind of having to pastor and to shepherd people who are older than I am, who have more life experience, who, that's college students will ask me like dating advice, or, I've taught college students how to change a tire, or, life stuff, like budgeting, that kind of a thing. Those kinds of life things I learn from the people that I pastor now, and so there's a weird dynamic where I may be the authority on some things, but I'm not the authority on a lot of things. And that relationship, that dynamic in discipling folks who are older than you, especially those who are much older than you, I don't know a class that teaches that. I think you just got to try it. You got to do it, learn from experience. And so, yeah, the residency, I do a lot of work with the college ministry here, but the residency here has allowed me to basically use a whole multi-generational body of believers as a lab where I get to really try out things and walk with people who are doing it really well, like the pastors here, and watch what they do, how they minister to the older generations or to the younger generations. Where for me, it was like, 18 to 22 year olds all in one location in town, all doing the same thing all the time. And that kind of experience has been invaluable.
Hey, Justin, what does the next year look like for you guys? So last year you were just, hey, we're saying yes.
Yeah.
This year, some training, development. What does the next 12 months look like for y'all?
Yeah, so we'll continue our process of training and development. For the first year of this residency, it's very much about me and my heart and my character and working on my health. Once we get into year 2, that doesn't leave, but we start looking more at like the practicals of preparing to actually plant a church in Austin. And there's some overlap there, but so we'll start taking vision trips more often. We'll start learning our context, exegeting our city, our campus, that kind of a thing. And so it's much more on the ground, maybe is what you would call it. At the same time, that's all training that I'm talking about. At the same time, we're starting to do, and we've kind of already been doing it, but starting to really go full throttle at a few things. One, building a team, a staff team and a core team. Core team being people who are not on staff but will be joining us as we plant this church. Most of them moving from a place like Lubbock or like Waco or other relationships that we have other places, and moving to Austin, getting jobs and stuff. So we're actually doing a cohort for those people right now, where we're kind of gathering a group of people, building a team, building community, and we'll end up training them. That's one of the big things I'm learning right now is I'm calling people around the country and saying, how do you train core team folks? And stuff. It's really hard. It's probably, I think most church planting people tell you it's probably one of the hardest things. I haven't met one person yet who's like, we do that really well. And so we'll be doing that for the next year and a half, building a staff team. We've got 2 staff members committed right now. We're working on a couple others currently, and hopefully they'll end up joining us soon. And then planning, just a bunch of planning, as much as you can do. So everything I'm doing right now is held with an open hand because I'm not in Austin yet. And so, it's like right now I'm planning, we're even working on a residency program, like not the one I'm going through, but like for ministry residents, for folks who have graduated college and want to kind of get like 2 years under their belt of ministry experience and a little bit of theological education. We're hoping to bring some residents with us when we plant. And so I'm working on a plan right now so that I don't have to work on that plan while I'm trying to do ministry in Austin, or how to get people connected and assimilated into the life of the church. Like we're figuring those kinds of systems out. We might get into real life in Austin and those things need to change, but we're trying to plan as much as we can so that we've got things built out, even if it doesn't exist yet. But we've got some things where we're not having to, I'm not having to spend time on my laptop creating those things. I can spend time with people, making disciples. That kind of a thing. So that's a lot of what the rest of the residency looks like.
Justin, what advice, I'm thinking about when you and Rebecca were like, hey, we have a kind of a burden in our heart to plant, don't really know when that's going to happen, but what if there's a young couple out there that's sitting there that kind of feels that too and really, they really don't have a track forward, and maybe the Lord just hasn't revealed that. But what advice would you kind of give them, about planting? Anything that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, for the person who is thinking about planting, and especially for that person who doesn't see a track forward, like they didn't grow up at Redeemer Church or something where it's normal for people to get involved in church planting. I think 2 things come to mind. I think 2 conversations that probably you need to have if you really do think that church planting is in your future. I'd say the first conversation needs to be with your lead pastor, especially if we're talking about like a college pastor or somebody like that. Now, I understand that for some people that may not be a safe conversation. If you've got a lead pastor who would take that as a threat or something like that, we can do a whole podcast on what you do in that situation, but likely your pastor's not going to be threatened by that. Likely it's going to be a welcome conversation, especially one that's like, hey, I think church planting is in my future. What do you think about that? I think that kind of conversation will help you with 2 things. One, it may end up creating a path for that. Where your pastor actually wants to get involved in this kind of a thing. This has been true. This is true for me. Our church in Waco is partnering with us and is sending us to plant alongside of Redeemer. And one of the staff members who we're bringing on, a guy named Ryan, is currently a next gen pastor at a church in Little Rock, Arkansas. And his pastor, exact same thing. He had that conversation, and the church is now sending him and financially supporting him. And so it may result in a path. The other thing too is it may be, if you've got a really good pastor, it may be a very clarifying conversation. It may be either, I think I see that in you, and I think that's really good. It also could be, I don't see that in you. and that might be helpful as well, as hard as that would be. The second conversation I would have is with other people who are around you, and as particularly if you know folks who know you and know church planting. I know that a lot of people may not have those relationships, but so for that person who doesn't have those relationships, maybe it's 3 conversations: people who know you really well, and then people who know church planting really well. But really kind of digging into the discernment of that calling. I think, I mean, God can do whatever he wants. And if you say you're called to church planting, I don't want to doubt that at all. But when the church in Antioch sends out Paul and Silas, the first time it says that the church in Antioch sent them. And then the second time it said that the Holy Spirit sent them. And so there's the Holy Spirit and the church. There's the community around you that is laying the hands on you and affirming that. And I think if you talk to the Mitch Tidwells, the Chase Abners, the people who see church planters all the time, and stuff, you talk to them, and if they know you, they can really help you discern that calling, and then also discern a next step for that, because they know all the current paths that can be taken. But yeah, those 2 conversations, lead pastor and the folks around you, I think are huge, and you continue working on that call, and I think things will start. That dream might start becoming a reality as you have those conversations.
Scored.
Justin, thanks for pushing people our way. I know Mitch and I both really relish the opportunity for someone exploring collegiate church planting to help them figure out what that might look like. And I'm even thinking about lead pastors who may be listening to this and who maybe they're not currently leading a church with a church planting culture, and so in their humility they can say, like, I don't know if you're called to it or not, because it's not really what we do. I don't have experience with that. And that's really where, denominational structures like SBTC, the Send Network, and the North American Mission Board, we can really come along beside churches because we have processes. Our assessment processes help discern, help a potential planting couple or the planter who's single to discern whether or not they're called into that ministry. And I mean, it's a pleasure to help serve churches in that way and potential missionaries. So so that would be something I had. I think your answer was great, but it really points to the need of, sometimes you need that third party, that objective outsider to look in and be like, hey, what is going on here? What is God stirring in your heart? But but honestly, like before we wrap up, I mean, there's something we really have to like probe with you. I'm not saying you're an international pop star, but the reality is I've never seen you in the same room as Justin Bieber. You say you're from Arkansas, you're not from Canada, but I have a photo that I want you to help explain what's going on here.
Dang.
And it appears to be Justin Bieber holding a Justin Smith DVD, or I'm not.
That's like sophomore year in college, I think, man.
College?
Dude, yeah.
That's sophomore in college? Shout out,
man.
Shout out to late bloomers everywhere.
That's right. Yeah, Bieber was like 10 years old when I was in college. You look at my wedding pictures, I look like I'm like 2 years older than that picture right there, and I look twice as young. Like I don't know. 2 kids have made me look a lot older. When I was 20, I looked like I was 16. So that was my attempt, a very lame attempt at dressing up like Justin Bieber for Halloween. That was Halloween night, sophomore year of college.
I think you're about 6
at a Walmart. I was at a Walmart because I was in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and that's the thing to do.
But by the way, if you're not watching the YouTube channel here, you're wondering what are they talking about? We have a picture posted right now, so go on our YouTube channel and check it out.
Right. You don't have to.
It's basically Justin Bieber.
It's fine. The podcast is great. We sound a lot better than we look.
I really like that mop. I mean, if you take the head off, that was a thick mop you had on your head. That was just
dude. I had some hair. We tried to straighten it to get that. You remember that classic Bieber haircut that like literally every teenage boy had at that time. We tried to do it. My hair wouldn't do it quite, and so we put a hat on. But yeah.
I thought you might be offended with me showing that picture. Is it too late now to say sorry?
No, it's fine, man.
Well,
I mean, you found it. It's out there somewhere.
That joke did not land. I was just quoting Justin Bieber lyrics, and it did not land.
What's that was, man?
Yes,
Well
okay,
done.
That's 3. That's 3. That's 3 in the whole podcast. Yeah, I get it now. I didn't catch it. Dang it.
That's amazing.
Man, as much of a Justin Bieber fan as I am, I didn't catch it.
It could be worse, Justin. I get asked almost daily if I've ever been told that I look like Nick Offerman, a.k.a. Ron Swanson.
I see it. I see it.
It's totally there.
I'll take it.
Hey, I will say this. Chase was like, "Hey, man, should we give him a heads up on this photo?" I was like, "Absolutely not.
No.
We're not giving him a heads up on that photo."
No, I respect that.
I figured you would.
Then I would have had to fake like a surprise.
Yeah,
No way, man.
Yeah, that's no good.
The Roundup podcast is all about integrity, man. This is real live
stuff.
interactions right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, Justin, thanks so much for being on today, dude. We've had so much fun and enjoyed it. Just get to catch up with you, man, see how you're doing and man, what you guys are processing and really excited because I know, so you said January 2023. That's when you guys plan to actually move. Is that right?
That's when we move. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we're excited for you. We look forward to catching up with you again and just getting to kind of hang with you and watch, what the Lord is doing through your life, through your family's life, and in hopes of planning just a robust, multiplying church in Austin, Texas, man, because we know that, man, Austin needs it, Texas needs it, the world needs it. So, man, we're rooting for you, praying for you, and, man, just appreciate you jumping on today.
Thank you, guys. I'm super grateful for you guys. Love you guys. Love what you do. God's doing something special through Roundup, especially, man. Gosh, it's such a cool thing. Such a cool thing. I'm grateful for you guys.
Man. You can keep going about that if you just want to plug Roundup real quick.
Bro,
before we get out of here.
yeah. I mean, I'll say it on the podcast. I've said it to you personally over and over again, but I think God is doing something in particularly special here in Texas among college ministers, and it's been a lot of what God has done through you, Mitch. It's pretty special, man.
Oh, man, really.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Really appreciate that, man. A lot of that just goes back to, man, dudes like Chase and Brian Fry, and, you get the right people in the room, man, great things happen. So, well, appreciate you, Justin, and we'll talk to you soon, my man.
Thank you, guys.
Friends, thanks for joining us on the Roundup podcast today. And don't forget, we have launched a YouTube channel where we host our podcast with video. Take a look, subscribe to our podcast on the YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and take a listen there. We also create a bunch of clips where you can just get some bite-sized info from each of the podcasts. So check that out. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your podcasts, and follow us on social media at SBTC Collegiate. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.